Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I'm going to share this painting I did for Sketchbook Sunday. This is a plant that I purchased a couple weeks ago for 88 cents at a local discount store called Martin's that we have in our area. And I didn't know how long this plant would last, but I've managed to keep it alive for a couple of weeks. And I really wanted to make sure that I got a chance to paint it before it died, but hopefully I can keep it alive for a long time. And you may have some Christmas poinsettias in your home that are still hanging on there that you might want to sketch before they go by, and hopefully this time lapse will help you. Like always with Sketchbook Sunday, I have a time lapse of whatever I'm working on that I feel to be a little bit of a challenge or something that I want to investigate a little bit more deeply and take my time with, and something that, you know, if I did it in real time probably wouldn't be that interesting to the YouTube world. So what I'm beginning by doing here is I took my 9x12 watercolor paper and I cropped it. So I used tape to crop it to about a 7x7 square because I thought that would be kind of fun and interesting, and it would give me boundaries, because I find that if you have boundaries it can be really a lot more easier to be creative when you give yourself a little limitation. I love the different sizes of the leaves that I have here. I think it's really kind of interesting, and then the different shapes, because you get the center flowers, those tiny little like buds there, then you've got the different leaves, some that have, you know, kind of ripened into the red and yellow, and some that are still green. Oh, and make sure you stick around to the end because I've got an exciting announcement that I want to share with you. And I'm sketching a little bit darker than you might want to in your sketchbook because I want to make sure it shows up on camera really well. And now that I'm happy with my sketch, I'm going to go ahead and put a light wash of a watered down lemon yellow. And this is a nickel titanate lemon yellow, which is not my favorite of lemon yellows, but honestly, it's ideal for the color that I'm going for on the edges of those leaves. And by putting that wash all over everything, it's going to unify. So now what I've done, I've let my paper dry, and by the way, I'm working directly on my good paper, but if you're not comfortable with your sketching ability, I recommend you draw it on copy paper, and then you can use a window or light box or graphite paper to transfer it. So that's always an option if you're feeling a little intimidated by working on that expensive, nice paper, even if it's in your sketchbook. If you're feeling that hesitation and that intimidation, do it on scrap paper so you don't have to worry. I'm using a cream Prismacolor pencil because Prismacolors are very waxy, and I'm drawing in the veins. I'm doing this so that it gives me a little bit of a guidepost to kind of map out these veins, because I think they're really a strong design element in this plant and something I really want to highlight. It's could potentially help me by creating a resist so I could just paint the red over it, or it can give me a little guidepost of where to paint around because I can see it well enough. Now I'm examining my plant. Examining? I don't think that's a real word, but it works, doesn't it? It works for what I'm doing. It's nice to be able to pick up something in real life and look at it. Now, if you're finding you're sharpening your pencil all the time and you feel like you're just wasting it, grab a piece of sandpaper, or this is actually a sandpaper block meant for artists. Sandpaper is just fine. And what you can do is just kind of sharpen your pencil on that so you're not wasting so much. And that way you only have to sharpen it in the sharpener when you just get it blunt down to wood. And that will really help you conserve and help you keep a nice fine line. And also you can kind of sharpen it to a chisel instead of a point, so you actually have a stronger lead that you can use on the chisel edge and conserve that way and not have breakage. So that's what you use those little sandpaper blocks for if you've ever had those in an art kit and you didn't know what the heck to do with them, or you never really found yourself using them. Now I'm going to choose the red that I'm going to use for my my plant, and I decided to use a Carmine, and it's nice. So you see how I blocked off that area on my sketch pad? So I've got the area I'm painting in, but I have the extra space. That is great for testing your colors. I can see if I'm going to get a good resist. And I can see there I'm not going to get a great resist from that, but I can use that as a guidepost, all of those little lines that I drew, for painting around. Or if I don't want quite strong veins, I can actually paint over them and get a very subtle resist. So having that place to practice where it's the same exact paper you're working on is super duper useful. So sometimes I get comments saying, geez, Lindsay, I wish I could hear what you're talking about. I wish I could know what was going through your head while you're working. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but for right now, I'm going to keep on narrating what I'm doing in this time-lapse fashion. So I'm basically going to look at my petals and go from petal to petal and try to capture how dark I want them. I can always go back and add glazes after it's dry, but I'm just trying to do what I can in one go to begin with. So this new offering that I wanted to share with you is actually something that I found very valuable when I was getting together with different artists and we were sharing our work, and this is artist critique. So I've started over on my Teachable School a critique club. So what you do there is you can share whatever painting you're working on and put it up there, and I would give you an honest critique, tell you kind of where you can improve, what is totally awesome that you're doing, and just kind of help push you to that next level of your painting. Sometimes people share their work with me on social media, and I love to see it, but I am wary about giving any critiques on that because for one, people are sharing their work. They don't necessarily want an opinion on it. They don't necessarily want a critique, and I don't feel like that's a place to do that. Especially you don't know if somebody's a first beginner, it's their first painting ever, or if they've been painting for 20 years. In the critique club, you can share your goals, say this is the painting I'm working on, I'm really happy with it, or you could say, you know, I really am not happy with the background, can you help me with that? Or what are your thoughts on this work? How can I improve? And that's what I want to be able to offer there. It's going to be $5 a month. You can stop and start anytime. And it's to kind of help you get over those humps, get better as an artist. And something that is a bonus is that you'll be able to see the other people's work in their critique club. I find that when I have done artist critiques or taken courses where there's a critique, oftentimes people, even if they haven't gotten a chance to bring any artwork into critique, they enjoy seeing the critiques of others because it helps them in things that they've been struggling with. So if you're shy to share your work, you can also benefit from what others are doing. And the reason I wanted to mention it here, what I'm getting back to, is that I'm actually going to be putting up a couple of my Sketchbook Sundays every month with a live narration in real time. Now these do tend to be longer videos. They're not really that YouTube friendly, and quite frankly, they're not as polished as to the fact that when I'm doing a video, I've got it very kind of down pat. I've practiced it. This, you're kind of hearing what's going through my head as I paint something for the first time, and I'm working around obstacles. Maybe things aren't going the way I thought, and you'll be able to see how I fix them, and also learn about the choices that I'm making while I'm making them. So you're kind of getting that bird on my shoulder type of look on these Sketchbook Sunday paintings. So if one of your goals for the new year was to become a better painter, to really push yourself, to improve your skills, check out Critique Club. I think it would be really useful. And even if you're a little shy about sharing your work, being in a group where people are so open to share their work and get honest feedback can be really helpful, because a lot of times we share the same struggles, and you may have an issue with the background on your painting and you see somebody else sharing their painting that has the same issue, and kind of learn how to overcome it can really be useful, even if you're not up to sharing your work yet. And that's another reason I wanted to put those Sketchbook Sundays there. I wanted to put my vulnerabilities out so you can kind of see, okay, everybody struggles. Everybody has these points in their painting where they think they've just ruined it, and this is how you overcome it. All is not lost. I think putting that honesty out there is really important, and this is going to be a nice, safe place that we can all do that together. So I'll have a link in the video description where you can find out more information on that. Back to our poinsettia here. For the shadows, I have simply added some indanthrone blue into my Carmine red, and I'm adding that area in the parts of the leaves that are being overlapped by other leaves. So that leaf underneath, that's going to have a little of that indanthrone blue mixed in to deepen up the color. Now, sometimes as artists, we will use a complementary color to darken up our color, and in this case, it would be green, so I could have used the green that I'm going to use for the leaves. However, when you are using a complementary color, or opposite on the color wheel color, that's a complement. When you're going to use that with something like fruit and flowers, oftentimes it just makes it a little muddy and makes it look a little like it's spoiled or gone by or just kind of past its prime. So I don't like to do that with a lot of florals for that reason. I like to keep it nice and fresh and lively. And by using like a color that I can mix with other colors, like I'm going to mix that blue in with my green, it'll just make it harmonize and give me a much fresher look. So that's why I chose that color. Now I decided I wanted a background for this since I took the time, and I'm using the tape to mask off the that square border. I know having a really pretty light wash of something would just look really nice when I remove the tape, and also having a nice flat wash will be a nice contrast to all of the pattern that I have on the petals or on the the leaves from the veining. So to get a really super flat, smooth wash, I use a technique called a controlled wash. And I've done this in some of my live stream videos that were longer before, and it's also a lesson in my Essential Tools and Techniques for Watercolor Painting online course. But basically what you do is you start a bead of color on one edge and you work that bead of color until you get to the final edge of your area you're trying to do a wash in. This works really well here where I have all these little confined areas of blue. If I was doing a really large background with lots of bits to get around, it would not be as easy because you'd end up with some backgrounds and streaks. But where you have these small areas or these confined areas, it works really well. And I just love the almost like glass smooth color that you get when you do this. I recommend practicing this technique in your sketchbook. You can even do this on cheap watercolor paper just to get the hang of it, because it's such a useful technique to know as a watercolor painter. Now I want to work in the center of the flower where we've got some deep shadows. Like if you're looking down the plant and you're seeing between the petals, what you're probably seeing is into the pot, into the dirt and the shadow, and it's just going to be pretty much a dark value. I decided to mix some colors to get a nice natural dark value that will coordinate with other things I have going on. So I'm using the indanthrone blue, I'm using some of the phthalo turquoise from the background that I diluted, but I'm using it strong, and some of the carmine red to make some deep kind of indigos and purples that will be a really nice dark value contrast and also just kind of anchor my picture a little bit. And it helps everything coordinate and harmonize because I'm using all those colors. Now that tiny little leaf that I just painted there, that's a leaf in transition. It's going from green to red, so basically it looks very pale. So I wet it, I added in some sap green for the veins and dabbed in some red and just let the colors kind of mellow and mix. Very watered down colors there. Having that contrast of a not perfect petal or leaf just gives you a little realism and makes the picture look a little bit nicer, because not everything's going to be perfect. You want to make sure that you capture some of those imperfections too and those flaws so that it looks interesting and nice. Now I decided on the leaves that I wasn't going to paint around the veins for the most part. I was going to get my colors down, but I wanted a little bit of interesting colors, so I'm using some sap green with some indanthrone blue. I'm also adding in some of the phthalo turquoise and indanthrone blue on its own a little bit more into the shadows, and I can dab in some of the yellow, the nickel titanate yellow lemon yellow that I used for that initial wash on the edges, and kind of let that spread in, and that way I have an interest in colors, even though I'm not playing up the veins on the green leaves because they just don't show up that much. I can still have that interest of color, and I think having that little bit of yellow around the edge gives it a really nice look. I like turning my paper while I'm working so that I'm not going to lay my hand down on a wet leaf, especially when you're working really wet like I am here on these leaves. They're going to stay wet for a while, and I just want to make sure I don't smudge them and mess up that beautiful background that I've painted. I'm also going in with that light mixture of sap green and lemon yellow to do those flowers in the center, and while it's wet I'm dabbing in some of the carmine, and I'm picking the carmine up with a small brush directly from the pan so it's very dry. That way it's not going to flood and just turn everything brown. It's going to leave a little speck. Now I've gone back to the carmine on its own, and I'm glazing on some deeper values onto the leaves. This looks really nice, and it can help kind of pop some of the leaves up. It can help define a little bit. If you have some of the leaves where the veins weren't so pronounced, you can kind of just glaze over the unveined areas and make them come alive a little bit more like that. The nice thing with watercolor is that all those layers of colors you put down really build up and look beautiful and give you that luminosity that watercolor is known for. And you can kind of spend as long as you want on this. You can add some stippling to the edges, which is when you just kind of dab your brush kind of in the borders a bit, and you can get some interesting texture that way. I'm going back into that leaf in transition, and I'm zooming in a bit so you can see a little bit better, and I'm adding in the sap green veins a little bit stronger. And I think that's kind of funny because when the leaf goes into transition, the veins appear more green, and then as it fully goes red, the veins go to that kind of yellowy cream color. So just observe as you're working. That will teach you so much about the subjects that you're painting and make you a better painter, especially if you have to go from memory in the future. I'm going to do a very similar technique on the leaves as I did with the, on the green leaves as I did with the red leaves, and that is glazing in between the veins. Now I can very vaguely make out the veins from the colored pencil. I know it's difficult to see on camera, and basically what I'm doing is using the sap green, phthalo turquoise, and indanthrone blue mix to go in and paint around some of those veins, just to give it some of, kind of echo the pattern that's on the other leaves, and just show that those do have the veins too. Sometimes if you don't detail, if there's not enough detail on something, it looks unfinished. So you do kind of have to look at it and judge whether something needs a little more detail, or if you're you don't want everything to have the same amount of detail. You do want a little bit of contrast, but you also need a little bit of repetition for a painting to feel like it is complete. And so just by having those subtle veins on the green leaves, it gives me that repetition that I need. So I'm pretty happy with it at this point. If you find that you want to pump up your colors a little bit, colored pencils are a great way to do that. I decided that I wanted a little bit more yellow, even though the plant is pale like that. Just for my personal taste, I wanted it yellower, so just adding really light touches with a colored pencil is all I really needed. So I just wanted to mention again the Critique Club. You are welcome to join if you want to improve your art in 2019, if you want to have a little extra help and guidance as you go along, and if you want to be inspired. I'll put information down below. You don't have to be a watercolorist. You can work in whatever media you want. I paint mainly in watercolor, mixed media, pastel, and oils, so I am fairly versed in most of the medias out there, but it is not a media specific group. I will be sharing my Sketchbook Sundays in real time in the group, so those may tend to be a little bit more watercolor, mixed media focused, but I do think there'll be something for everyone to enjoy, and it will be $5 a month. So about the price of a fancy schmancy coffee at Starbucks, right? And I love removing the tape when we're all done. It looks so nice and fresh, and I think it's just really, really fun. I did decide to go in and add a little bit more red to some of the areas just to deepen and punch out the leaves a little bit and make them feel a little bit more finished, and that is completely up to you whether you want to do that or not. I want to thank you so much for watching today. If you have any questions about anything we did, please leave them in the comments below and I will check back later. And I hope you give something like this a try in your sketchbook. Sketchbook work is meant to experiment. It's meant to work without fear and to grow as an artist. And that's something we should all do for ourselves. That's a gift we should all give ourselves because we're worth it. Paint, create, make something fun today. And until next time, happy crafting and painting too. See you later.